Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Brock Blake. I am the co-founder and CEO of Lendio, the largest marketplace in the United States for small business loans. And we're coming to you live from our headquarters in Lehi, Utah. And I can see we have thousands of small business owners that are joining us from all across the United States. We welcome you and are excited to talk about all things PPP today. Before we do that, let me give you a little bit of an overview of who Lendio is. We are, as I mentioned, a marketplace for small business loans. Think and use Expedia for hotels or Kayak for flights or Yelp for restaurants. You use Lendio as a marketplace to get connected to many lenders and to get a loan that you need, whether that be SBA loans, working capital loans, lines of credit, equipment loans, or in this case, PPP loans or idle grants. Our goal is to help small business owners fuel their American dream. And PPP is one of those products, and in the last round, we were able to help over 100,000 small business owners across the United States get access to a PPP loan, much needed capital. The first thing that I want to say is that I feel for each one of you and what you're going through as a business owner. There isn't a person in America who thought this pandemic would last as long as it has. And we are going through difficult times with quarantines and restrictions and pain and things that are is outside of our control. And I can only imagine how you're trying to piece it all together and keep your team members employed and keep your doors open and your lights on. You are the reason why we exist. You are the reason why we do this. We care about small business owners. In fact, we tweaked our mission during this pandemic from fueling the American dream to saving the American dream, because our goal is to help make this process easier. We recognized last time there was so much anxiety and so much stress and so many questions and unknowns around how do I get the loan and who do I go to, and my bank won't give me the loan that I need. What are the applications what type of application do I need to fill out? What documents are needed? And our goal with this webinar is to provide answers to many of those questions. And we're going to do our best to cover as much as we can in the time that we have allotted. So what a year over the... We all know that the PPP, the first round of PPP started back in April, and you were eligible to get a loan up until August 8th of this year. From August 8th until the end of December, Congress was playing politics, and we were all frustrated to watch how we all knew that business owners needed this capital, and it just kept going back and forth and back and forth. And there was a lot of frustration built up. Finally, the bill was passed at the end of December and allows small business owners across the country to not only receive a first draw on a PPP loan if you did not get a loan the first time, or a second draw. If you already have one loan, you're eligible for a second draw. So today we're going to walk through those guidelines and the details and try to answer as many questions as we possibly can. There are already thousands of people on this webinar, and there are many questions, and a lot of the questions are similar. We're going to try and answer as many as we possibly can. So as I jump in, it's important to know the first things first. The SBA has 10 days to provide guidance to the entire community around the guidelines of the Paycheck Protection Program. Those 10 days, basically they have until tomorrow evening, January 6th, to release guidelines, and we expect those guidelines to be released. What that means is that the full details have not been released. Many of the details were included in the bill, and we're going to provide you as many details as we can. But we don't have all the answers. And the key point that I'll communicate to you is at Lendio, we are dedicated to providing you the answers. So whether we answer those questions today on this webinar, or whether we're able to deliver the answers to those questions through our social media platforms, on Twitter or on Facebook, on Instagram, or on our blog, or through our emails. We will provide regular updates on what you need to know. So we'd encourage you to be able to, if you're not already signed up for our email newsletter or signed up for our website, please do so, and we'll keep you up to date with as much information as we can as it comes out. Once the SBA releases their guidelines, which will likely, like I said, happen tomorrow, we expect that they will give lenders probably 7 to 10 business days to implement the guidelines, because no lenders have the exact details of how to accept an application and how to process an application. For those of you that applied in the first round, you know that the first few days was just, dare I say, a disaster. So many questions, so many unknowns, and lenders weren't prepared. This time around, that we want to make sure that every lender out there, bank and credit union and fintech lender is ready to go. Now, our job at Lendio is to get the application ready for you to apply the minute that it is eligible. You are eligible. And we'll provide you those details today. And then we will match your application off to a lender and help so that you can get the PPP loan that you're seeking. The guidelines, some of the things that we're going to cover today are PPP first draw. For those that haven't got a PPP loan, the guidelines around a PPP second draw, some of the information that Congress has done to prioritize the smallest of small businesses, larger loan sizes for industries that have been hit the hardest, idle loans and grants, some of the SBA product tweaks, and a simplified forgiveness application for loans less than $150K. So let's start with the PPP first draw. If this bucket would be anyone that is listening that hasn't received a PPP loan yet. For whatever reason, you did not apply during the year 2020, and you want to apply for your first round of PPP. We believe that the SBA will turn on the application for first draw PPP probably in the next week, and they will include the same guidelines that were around the first PPP that existed previously. So, for example, to get a first PPP loan, you must have been in business prior to February 15th, 2020. You must have less than 500 employees. And if you meet those criteria, then you're eligible to apply. Now, the loan size that you'll be eligible to receive is 2.5 times your average monthly payroll. So you take all of your employees and across the year of across a 12-month period, and the sum of all of the payroll costs, divide it by 12, and that's your average monthly payroll, and times that by 2.5. And that will be your qualification for the amount of loan that you are eligible for. We believe that the maximum loan size is $10 million for a first-time PPP loan. That has changed for the second time, but for the first time, the maximum is $10 million. Now, that loan must be used for certain specific expenses. 60% of the loan amount must be used to cover payroll. And then the remaining can be used on other eligible expenses, including mortgage interest, utilities, and then a few other. I'm really excited about this change. There's a few eligible expenses that Congress added to the first-time draw, which is if you have a software that you use to run your business that that helps you operationally run your business, accounting and human resource software, that is an eligible expense. If you had any property damage in 2020 from some of the public disturbances that occurred, those would be eligible expenses under the new law. If you have any supplier costs that are required in order to run your business, that you have to have those things to keep your business open, those are also eligible expenses under the new rules of PPP. And finally, the last eligible expense is that if you have any worker protection expenses to keep you safe during coronavirus, those are also eligible. So this would be personal protection equipment, the gear that you use, any material like plexiglass that you would use if you're at a restaurant, any like something like a drive-through if you were a restaurant and you wanted to open up a drive-through to be able to serve your customers. Anything that will help your business to remain compliant with federal and state safety guidelines around COVID are now eligible expenses and can be forgiven under the new guidelines. And then finally, there's some more flexibility around payroll documentation for sole proprietors and self-employed. The great thing about this Paycheck Protection Program is that if you use that money for those expenses, then the entire thing will be forgiven, and you'll be eligible to be able to have it forgiven down the road. So those are the guidelines if you haven't got a first PPP loan. Now let's talk about those of you that already have a PPP loan and you're considering getting a second draw or a second PPP loan. The first thing that I would just say is some of you might have questions around getting your loan forgiven, and you've been waiting to apply to get your loan forgiven. Loan forgiveness happens directly with the lender that you worked with the first time. And fortunately, Congress just made in this bill, they made a simplified application. It's a one-page application for all PPP loans less than $150,000. And so the SBA will release that one-page application, and that should make it significantly easier for you as a business owner to get your first loan forgiven. Again, go back to your lender, and that simplified application will come. If you're not less than $150,000, anything above a $150,000 loan size, all of the details around your loan application already exist, and your lender should have those and should be ready for you to go and get your loan forgiven. Now, who's eligible for a second draw on their PPP loan? Many of the rules are very similar to what existed in round one, with a few exceptions. The most important exception is that you must show a 25% reduction in revenue from 2019 to 2020, at least a 25% reduction in revenue. So what they'll do is they'll look at on a quarterly basis. So you could look at quarter one of 2019 and compare it to quarter one of 2020, and if any one of your quarters in 2020 shows at least a 25% reduction in revenue, you will be eligible for a second draw on your PPP loan. Now, some of the same guidelines. You have to have been in business prior to February 15th of 2020. The loan calculation is similar for most industries, although there is a tweak for some of the industries that were hit the hardest. So for most industries, it's 2.5 times your average monthly payroll. Again, take your full payroll for the year during a 12-month period, all of your employees, sum them all up, divide it by 12, that's your average monthly payroll, times it by 2.5, and that's the eligible loan amount that you would qualify for. Now, for some industries, specifically it says those that are in the accommodation or food service. So that is usually restaurants, hotels, and other travel-related businesses. Anyone that is in that industry is eligible for 3.5 times your average monthly payroll. So similar calculation, but instead of 2.5x your average monthly payroll. It's 3.5 times your average monthly payroll. So that's great news for those industries that have been hit the hardest. The other couple of changes are, I love that Congress is really prioritizing the smallest businesses. And how are they doing that? They're doing that in 3 ways. Number one, the maximum number of employees that you can get for a second draw is 300. Before it was 500, now it is 300. Number two, the max loan size is $2 million. So before, I'm sure you heard, all in the press and on the news, all these very large businesses and publicly traded companies that were going out and maxing out $10 million loan sizes. And a lot of that capital was being distributed to the largest businesses. In this round, with the second draw, the max loan size is $2 million. And they've actually restricted, if you're a publicly traded company, you will not be eligible to get a second draw on your PPP loan. The third thing that Congress did, and this is the one I love the most, last time, so many small businesses, the self-employed, the smallest of small businesses, were underserved. They were at a disadvantage. Here's why. Lending institutions prioritized their biggest customers first. And you could see it. The average loan size was $400,000 at some of these banks, or $500,000, and all of the smallest businesses, those that are Main Street businesses, just kept getting pushed off and pushed back, and they were not able to get approved for a loan. That was a customer segment at Lendio that we decided to focus on. We were like, we're going to fight for the underdog, and we're going to help those small businesses, and that's who we prioritized in round one. When Congress was contemplating this next round, we fought hard for those small businesses and saying that you need to provide incentive for lenders to focus on the lower loan sizes, to focus on the smaller businesses. And Congress responded. And so they created an additional incentive for lenders to fund any loans less than $50,000. And where last time they prioritized the larger loan sizes, I believe that they will not do that this time. And it will really take care of the businesses that are underserved, that need this capital the most. And I'm so excited about that change. As is with round one, this loan needs to be used for certain eligible expenses. They're the same eligible expenses: 60% on payroll, mortgage, utilities, or mortgage interest, rent, utilities, and any other expenses that we talked about like before. So any of your safety equipment, your PPP or PPE, and any of any property damage from public disturbances, any supplier costs that are required to have to run your business. Those are all eligible to be forgiven under the second draw. Now, there are other topics we want to cover. You need to know about the EIDL grant. It's basically free money for up to $10,000 for businesses that have been hit the hardest. I want to tell you about that. They've created this shuttered venue grant for businesses that are live venues, so theaters or comedy or other businesses like that, concert halls, Broadway. They've created a grant program for those businesses because they haven't been able to be open most of the year. I want to talk to you about that. They've made some really important changes to SBA products. I want to talk to you about that. But before we get there, I recognize there are so many questions that are flooding us about the first and second draw PPP loans. And primarily the questions are on how do I apply? When do I apply? What's the process? So let me start there. remember, the SBA is not accepting applications yet. So while so no one can be approved for a loan yet, and it's probably going to be about 10 days before the SBA actually turns on their E-Trend technology to allow lenders to submit their application. That being said, you can start on your application now, so that the minute that the application, that the SBA is open and turned on, we can submit you to get approved. Let me clarify a couple different aspects. Let's start, first of all, talk about your first loan application. If you haven't got a first PPP draw, all the requirements and the guidelines are the same. So our application is on. And you can go and you can give us the information you need, front and back of your ID, your payroll documentation, and complete your PPP application online. We'll start validating the information, doing payroll calculations, and doing other things to make sure that your application is prepped and ready to go for us to be able to submit it as soon as it's turned on. Now, for second draw applications, we don't have a second draw application turned on yet. No one does, because the SBA hasn't released any guidelines. The SBA hasn't given us what the application is going to look like. We can guess, and we have started to do that, because we based on what the Congress has provided, there's a lot of details in here, and so we've started prepping all those materials so we can hit the ground running. We do know that some of the information on the second draw is going to remain consistent. We're going to need front and back of ID. We're going to need payroll documentation. So you can fill out your application on Lendio and get that process started. But I want you to know that there will be a requirement for you to go back and update your application as soon as we get guidelines from the SBA and as soon as we update the second draw application. So for those that are members on Lendio that are already getting our emails, we will be sending out messages and notifications to let you know the minute that it is turned on. We'll send you an email for you to come back in, update your second draw application, and then we'll get it submitted to the lenders for approval. So I know most of your questions are around the application. I'm going to start going through some of these other questions that have been submitted. Okay, I'm going to start. I'm not sure. I've got so many questions. I don't even know where to start. Start at the bottom first. I've got a team here that's guiding me. Okay. Which 6 months of bank statements do we use on this application? 2019 or 2020, and the first 6 months or the last? Well, so first of all, we don't need, as of right now, we don't need bank statements for the second draw. And so the question is around which app you may have gone through. There are two different types of applications on Lendio. There is our normal marketplace application, which is not a PPP loan application. And in that scenario, we always pull 6 months of bank statements to have you evaluate your working capital lines, your SBA loans, or any other loan products that you might be eligible for. For a PPP loan, we don't, as of right now, we don't anticipate we will need 6 months of bank statements applications. There will be some criteria to be able to prove your revenue reduction, but we don't know what that is yet. And so we'll provide you those details as soon as we get them. Question here says, do you have to have paid the first PPP loan back before getting a second draw? To my understanding, you do not. It doesn't have to be forgiven. You are eligible to go get a second draw even if you haven't paid off your first PPP loan or your first PPP loan has not been forgiven. Okay. You do have to use the funds from the first draw to be eligible for the second draw, but you don't have to have paid that back. You have to, because obviously the use of funds is to cover those expenses, to keep your lights on, and make the payroll, but it doesn't. You don't have to have that paid off or forgiven to be eligible for a second loan. Okay, it says, when does the 12-month period of the average payroll need to take place? Is it December 20 through December 2021? It is any 12 months from January 1st of 2019 to today. You can take any 12-month period during that time frame to use as your period, and then you take the average of those 12 months. Now, the key here is that you're going to have to provide documentation. Documentation is your quarterly tax filings, your 940s, and your Schedule C, and some of those other tax filings. So, you could say Q3, Q4 of 2019, Q1, Q2 of 2020. And then you take all four of those and then divide it by 12 and to get your average monthly payroll. But it doesn't have to be a calendar year or anything like that. Okay. It says, do we need a speed to get in line for access to these funds like round one? Is there the same urgency? I anticipate there will be similar urgency like round one. There's only $284 billion allocated for these draws. And that includes first-time PPP loans and second draw. And so now the loan size is going to be smaller, meaning there's not going to be as many $10 million loans because the maximum loan size is $2 million. And the other criteria is that you have to show a revenue reduction. Not every business will show a revenue reduction of 25%. We estimate that 60 to 70% of businesses will meet that 25% eligibility criteria. So there's going to be fewer businesses apply, but there's also less capital available. And so our recommendation is to start preparing the information you need. How can you document that your revenue has been reduced? Do you have your proper ID? Do you have your proper payroll documentation? Get that information ready, get the application started, and then as we get the information from the SBA, we'll feed that to you, and you can continue to update it until SBA's turned on and we can submit it. And we'll do our best in a first in, first out basis to take the application and submit it to our lenders to be approved through the SBA. Okay, should I apply for my second PPP loan straight through my lender or through Lendio? This is a great question. We worked with so many business owners, over 100,000 business owners in the first round, and we matched you up to a lender. What we recommend is to be able to apply through Lendio, and the reason why we do that, and in fact, that sounds feels a little bit self-interested in that. But let me explain why. And let me also say, we want you to get your loan wherever you can get it. So if you have a relationship with your local bank and to be able to do that, then great. We care more about you getting the loan than anything. But the reason that Lendio adds a benefit is that where we optimize around is the lenders that have the best systems to be able to approve the loans the fastest. And so if lender A is backed up and not able to approve loans, then we'll pass it to lender B. And if lender B is stacked up, then we'll go to lender C. And we have many lenders in our network that we have great relationships with, that have built great technology and great systems, and they're prepared to handle lots of volume. But as those volumes vary, we can distribute you to a different lender that is processing loans more quickly to get you the loan as fast as you possibly can. What we'd hate to have happen, and this happened in the first round, and maybe to some of it, sometimes it happened to you, is that you apply with your local bank, and it gets backed up in this logjam, and then you don't know if you're approved, and you feel stuck, and then you have to go to the back of the line with another lender. So that's our goal, is to be able to have many lenders and distribute these loan applications to those lenders that are processing the fastest. Question here, is it in my best interest to get a second PPP loan with the same lender? There are some benefits to going back to the same lender, in that you've already established a relationship with them. They've already done some of their compliance checks and other things like that. And so if you've had a great experience with that lender, there can be some benefits to that. Now, if that lender is not, there are quite a few lenders we've already noticed that are not actually participating in this next round of PPP, and so for those lenders, we'll be taking those applications and moving them to a different lender that can still do a second draw and go through that process efficiently. So whether it's your same lender or a different one, it doesn't really matter. The goal is to get you the capital that you need during this critical time, what we're calling the dark winter, until the vaccine comes. I have a question here. It says, I've submitted my application already. When will I hear back? I'm not sure if you submitted that application through Lendio or through someone else, but we've already hired a significant staff of team members that are working through those applications. In fact, I believe we'll have over 500 new team members hired within, we already have a couple hundred that have been hired and more on the way. And so those applications we're already processing them now. We're already giving feedback. We're already going through the payroll calculations. We're getting them. What we're trying to do is get your T's crossed and your I's dotted, and so that the minute the SBA turns the application on, you're ready. So if you haven't heard back already, you should be hearing back soon. And it could be that your application is fully complete and ready to go, and it's just in queue to be submitted as soon as the SBA turns on the application. Okay, I'm gonna find out. Let me just see if there's any other any other questions that I should answer before we move on. Okay, it says, I applied in October for a second PPP loan. I sent all the documents. I was told my application would not be submitted until the new program starts. When will it be submitted? So I'll just reiterate this one more time, just because I think it is, I realize there's a lot of urgency around this. The SBA has not released the guidelines on the second draw application yet. We expect those guidelines to be released tomorrow. Once those are released, a lender, all of us, including Lendio and all of our lenders, will implement the guidelines, and we expect the SBA to turn on their E-Tran, which allows us to submit the approval to the SBA in 7 to 10 days. So we anticipate sometime next week, it may be the week after, we'll be able to finally notify you that the second draw application is live. Come back, update your application, and then we'll get it submitted to the SBA. Hopefully there's some clarity around that. Okay, I'm going to just cover a couple things, and then we can answer any last questions at the end. So, and I'm going to go through these really pretty quickly, just because I want you to be aware. Some of you remember that there was the Economic Injury Disaster Loan, or EIDL. There's an EIDL loan program and an EIDL grant. The EIDL loan is something that is totally separate from the PPP loan, and you apply directly to the SBA. I would go Google the details around the EIDL loan, that disaster loan. What I want to talk to you about is the EIDL grant. the EIDL grant is a grant that does not have to be repaid up to $10,000. And if you did not get a grant the first time, they opened up the grant program again for people to apply. And basically you can be eligible for up to $1,000 per employee, up to a max of $10,000. For those of you that have not received an EIDL grant, I would encourage you to be able to look at that, go to the SBA, apply for it. Many business owners that we worked with last time were eligible for that, that's basically, if you've been impacted significantly, it's a great option for you to be able to get access to up to $10,000. The second grant that I want to mention to you is the Shuttered Venue Grant for live event venues. This is similar to the EIDL in that you'll need to apply directly to the SBA. The SBA hasn't released the guidelines on it. But for anyone, if you are a movie theater, Broadway, concert hall, comedy shows, anything that's live events, then you've been severely impacted by COVID and the pandemic. You have the opportunity to receive a grant up to $10 million. Now you cannot receive a shuttered venue grant and a PPP loan at the same time. You have to choose one or the other. That is a great program. There's more details that are coming out on that. So if you meet that criteria, you might want to consider the shuttered venue grant versus a PPP loan, and the SBA will release more guidance on that soon. Finally, if for anyone who is looking for just a traditional SBA loan, there's two things that Congress has put into this bill for SBA loan products. Number one, it increases the guarantee up to 90% of your loan. And that means lenders are going to be more excited to be able to offer and approve SBA loans. So even after you get a PPP loan, if you need an additional loan product, we'd love to be able to help you with that. Especially on the SBA, you've got a 90% guarantee, and they're waiving some of the borrower fees on those products. The second thing that I love about the change on this SBA product is that they increased the loan size of the SBA Express from $350,000 to $1 million. The SBA Express is a great product for small businesses, and to have, it used to be a max of $350,000, and now it's to go up to $1 million. The criteria of being accepted is lower than a lot of other loan products. And so that's a great opportunity for business owners that are looking for a traditional SBA loan. Now, as we wrap up, the thing I want to iterate the most is that we feel for what you're going through, and our hope is to do everything, provide you as much information as we possibly can to help you through this difficult time. We can help, whether that is through the PPP guidelines, a first draw or a second draw, and putting you with the right lender and accelerating that timeline. That's what we're trying to do. It might be that you don't need a PPP loan. You might need a working capital loan or an equipment loan or an SBA loan, in addition to or above and beyond your PPP loan. We'd love to be able to help you out there. We all see the light at the end of the tunnel with the vaccine coming, and it's how do we get through this challenging time until they can open up, they can remove the restrictions, remove some of the quarantines, and we can get back to normal business, I guess I would say, hopefully we've answered your questions today. If you have any questions at all that we didn't answer, there's two things that I would recommend that you do. Number one, you can come and start your application. You'll be assigned a funding manager who can help answer your questions, any specific questions with you, and give you some guidance. Two, you can email us at customerservice@lendio.com. And we've got a team of dedicated customer service agents that are prepared to be able to respond to your questions and hopefully give you the guidance that you need. Our goal is to help as many of you get through this pandemic as possible. And we appreciate that you'll take some time out of your day to join us on this webinar. Stay tuned for continued updates on social media, through email, and on our blog. As soon as we get guidance from the SBA, as soon as that second draw app is ready, we have our engineering team ready to code it and make it available. As soon as the SBA gives us guidance, we're going to send you a notification so you can come in and start the application. And we'll have over 500 team members here ready to be able to help you out through that process. So we wish you the best of luck. Thank you so much for joining us today. Take care.